Hi there, nature lovers. Welcome to Ask-A-Naturalist, our very first program of this nature. My name is Rebecca, and I'm really excited to get started with you. I am coming to you live from Philadelphia on behalf of the Schuylkill Center for Environmental Education. I'm going to take a couple minutes to let a few people come on if they so wish, but I will tell you a little bit about the Schuylkill Center. We are an environmental education center in Philadelphia, PA. We have about 340 acres of wild land, and we have a visitor center. We do a lot of school programs. We also go to schools. We have a nature preschool. We have a lot going on. So we're doing a lot of virtual programming, as is everyone these days, and we are doing this Ask a Naturalist. It is our very first episode of this new series. It'll be every Monday, and it will be a half hour at 5 o'clock. There was a Google form that went out before this episode where a few people submitted questions that I am going to answer. The Google form will be up for next week, right after this video. So you will have a chance to ask me anything that you would like to. The comments will also be on. If anybody has any questions, I'll do my best to answer them while I'm here. But I'm really excited to be here with you all now. And let's get started with our very first question, shall we? We've waited a couple minutes. So our very first question of Ask a Naturalist is brought to you by Patty from Germantown. Hi, Patty from Germantown. Thank you for your question. The question is as follows. I have a front garden that has a mix of native and non-native plants. Is there any harm in having non-natives or just not as much benefit as the natives? This is a really good question, and I am really glad that this was the very first question we got, because it's a complicated question, and I love those, and I love to give complicated answers. So let's start with what a non-native versus a native plant is for anybody who's watching who might not be familiar. A native plant or a native animal, a native species of any kind, is an organism, a species that lives in the place where it naturally occurs and where it naturally belongs. In this, this organism will have an equal beneficial relationship with the rest of its environment. It has predators that will keep its population under control. It has things that it likes to eat, whether they be other plants or animals. It has a natural habitat where it lives, and it's in symbiosis with the rest of the habitat and the ecosystem, the environment with which it lives. A non-native plant or species, organism, what have you, is something that does not naturally occur in the area which it currently is actually in. Maybe it came from a different country or a different habitat, and somehow, either accidentally or on purpose, usually by humans, it was brought to a different habitat and ecosystem, and now it kind of disrupts the balance of the ecosystem. So maybe it doesn't have any predators to keep its population under control. Maybe it really likes the taste of this one plant or this one animal, and it eats all of it, and there's not enough for the predators that would naturally want it. Maybe it takes over the homes and habitats of other creatures that need it. A big example of this, if you like current events, is the spotted lanternfly. Obviously, if you live in or near the Philly area or in the Northeast right now, they're all the talk. They do a lot of damage to crops and to native trees we have here. So that's a non-native insect. So rewind, let's go back to this question. The question was, I have a front garden that has a mix of native and non-native plants. And then what's the harm of native plants, basically? So this is a lot opinion-based, I would say, but it is also a general opinion of a lot of people I work with and a lot of people that have gardens or know a lot about them. But not all non-native plants in gardens especially are created equal. So the bottom line is that right now we have an insect population decline crisis, particularly with pollinators such as bees and butterflies. And these are the insects that would benefit a lot from flowering plants, right? And people love to put flowering plants in their gardens because they're beautiful, they're colorful, they smell really nice. And actually this person did send me a photo of her garden and it's full of beautiful flowers. So non-native flowers, do they not belong? Yes, they don't belong. Maybe they take over habitat space where native flowers and plants would go instead. However, they are probably doing a lot of benefit for pollinators. And they also are probably creating habitat for some creatures that would not have that habitat if instead of a garden, this person just chose to have a sprawling lawn. So I would say a garden is always a step up better from one of those sprawling lawns. And if you have non-native plants on it, then as long as they are doing, I would say, a service to the wild creatures that would come to your property, I think that I would do it too, to be honest. I would definitely say let's prioritize native plants, for sure. Always go to your local flower shops, your local gardening shops, find out, do some research as to what the native plants are, the flowers in your area, and who are the pollinators that are going to visit these plants. Which plants do they like most? Prioritize native flowers. Try in your garden to have a healthy mixture of native and non-native plants, for sure. And like I said in the beginning, non-native plants were not created equal. If you have a plant such as bamboo that is highly invasive, that takes over everything, I would say maybe choose not to plant that. I think your garden will thank you for not planting it, and I think that your neighbors will thank you for not planting it, because bamboo is extremely hard, if nearly impossible, to eradicate or to maintain once it really gets going. But if you'd like to have some nice flowers that you know aren't going to grow out of control, that you are going to take care of and maintain, those could create some really nice habitats for those creatures. So it's all about balance. That's my opinion. Thank you for your question, Patty from Germantown. Let's keep it going with our next question. Okay, this is coming to us from Danny of New York, New York. So far away! That's really exciting, because something I've been really excited about virtual programming is that we get to have a whole new audience that is so expanded from our Philadelphia audience, because they're not necessarily coming to the Schuylkill Center. They just want to learn about what we have and what we know and what we do, and we can do that from afar. So that is really awesome that this person is coming to us from New York. All right, so the question is, what animal is there the most of in the park? What is an ecosystem? What kind of ecosystems are there in the Schuylkill? Danny, what a great question. You came from so far to give us this question. So let's start with what animals are there most of in the park? Really great question. I mean, the most easy answer would be the variety of insects that we have. Ants, various bugs of all kinds. Those would be the most quantity. We have a ton of squirrels. We have one squirrel named Jeffrey who likes to eat all of our food because we think she used to be a pet and then she was released into our center, and she's not afraid of humans, so you'll see her around a lot. We also do have a lot of deer. We have a lot of frogs and toads that you can hear singing their beautiful songs. So it's really great. Those are some of the most common animals in the park. Of course, we have tons other, depending on the seasons also. What is an ecosystem? What a great question. An ecosystem is a relationship between non-living and living organisms that live together in an area, and they react with, interact with, and like I said, have a relationship with each other. So an ecosystem consists of biotic and abiotic factors. Biotic being living things, animals, bugs, plants. Abiotic meaning non-living things, but that's tricky because I don't mean dead things, things that once were alive. I mean things that are non-living entirely. Rocks, weather, sunlight, rain, water, those things. So an ecosystem, to reiterate, is living and non-living things living in one area and interacting and relating to and with one another. So in PA, the last question was what kind of ecosystems are in the Schuylkill? So in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, we have a couple of ecosystems. We have forests, we have lakes, we have rivers, and we have wetlands. I had to look at my notes for that last one. So more specifically, in the Schuylkill Center, we have forests. We do have deciduous forest ecosystem. We have 5 ponds of various sizes, so no lakes, smaller, but still ecosystems, still bodies of water. We also have creeks, and we are close to the Schuylkill River. We also do have meadows that we maintain actively by mowing. People ask a lot, why do we mow the meadows? Wouldn't they not be mowed if they were left alone in nature? The answer is yes, but because of the laws of succession, which is the natural progression of an ecosystem, if we left alone the meadows, they would turn into forests. The trees, seeds would blow over there, the bushes, all the grasses, and eventually it would grow right into the forest. So we mow it occasionally, a few times a year, to keep it a meadow so that the creatures that like to live in meadows, who would leave if it turned into a forest, can stay there and have their habitat. So those are the kinds of ecosystems, those are the animals we have, and that is what an ecosystem is. So that question is answered. Thank you very much, Danny from New York. It was a pleasure answering your question. And my next question, let us see it. All right, my next question is coming at me from Alice. And this question was, what does it mean when a bee crawls into the siding of the house and drops dust-like stuff? This question is really cool, actually, because I have been working on another project for the Schuylkill Center that is a bee home, and that will be posted in one of our Year of Action videos at the end of this month. Plug alert. Go check out our other videos, particularly our Year of Action videos, happening by going to our Facebook page, our website, schuylkillcenter.org. Go check out all the other virtual programs we're putting out because they're all really unique and they're all super cool. So, what does it mean when a bee crawls into the siding of the house and drops dust-like stuff? Now, I have a question for you, Alice, actually. I am wondering if you have only seen one single bee go into the siding of your house, or maybe single bees go into different housing, or if you're seeing swarms of bees and many bees going into the various siding of your house. Because you might be dealing with different species of bees here. You might be dealing with solitary bees, such as leafcutter bees or mason bees, or you might be dealing with swarm bees, hive bees, such as honeybees or bumblebees. So that is my question to you. They are probably creating a home out of the siding of your house. You've probably given them, I would imagine accidentally, a very nice, comfortable, warm, dark, safe, nice place in between the siding of your house and the rest of your house. So they will thank you, even though possibly you don't want to hive there. I don't know, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it sounds like they are there. A hive of bees would need a lot more space than a solitary bee, such as a mason bee. A solitary bee actually will find tiny holes in places such as dead wood or logs, houses, really anywhere that they're able to find. They won't be able to make the holes or create them themselves because they're not strong enough, so they are left to look for holes that already exist. And Once they find a little hole, what they're going to do is they're going to bring a bunch of pollen into that hole. And they're going to create something called bee bread, which is a mixture of pollen and stuff. And they're going to lay an egg in the hole, put the bee bread in there, and then seal up that cell so that the egg, once it hatches into a new little bee, will have all of that bee bread to eat. Then they will create in the same hole, after that first cell, they will create another cell. Egg, bee bread, cell closure. Egg, bee bread, cell closure. On and on until the hole fills up. What you are seeing, what I would imagine you're seeing without having a picture, without knowing exactly what kind of bee or whatnot, but what I would imagine you're seeing, that dust-like stuff that you mentioned, is likely pollen. I would say it might have a yellowish tint to it. A lot of times pollen can be mistaken for dust. A lot of people can have pollen allergies and dust allergies, which might be similar to each other. So yeah, you might be seeing that pollen. The other thing is that if you're looking at a hive of bees, you'll still see that pollen, but their situation of how they are making their hive and laying their eggs is different. Obviously, they all interact with each other a lot more. So they are having little cells in their hives, as you've seen from, if you've seen honeycomb, we know that those cells are hexagonal. They've got all those sides, kind of like a stop sign. And they are putting in their bee bread and their egg into each of those cells. And it's the same thing. Once the eggs hatch, they have something to eat, and they'll be really happy as soon as they hatch. So that is probably, I would imagine, what you're seeing. If you don't want to see the bees there, I would suggest calling somebody about that. I don't have any phone numbers for that, but I have heard many complaints from people around, especially this time of year, of having bees in or near too close to their houses or on their properties. I have a question from, I hope I pronounce your name right, Tegan Belita. I've been seeing many queen southern yellow jackets. Why are there more of these around now? That's a really good question. I actually am not super familiar with different species of yellow jacket, so I wouldn't know too much about southern yellow jackets. But the queen part is interesting. Now is the time of year actually where queens are leaving a hive and going to other hives and making their new nests. So a queen will leave a hive and will take with her some drones, which are other female bees that do not mate and do not lay eggs. They exist entirely just to help service the queen and keep her alive and keep her and her eggs fed and her babies fed. So they will actually leave a hive, and they will take some drones with them, and they will fly around until they find a new location. So you might be seeing queen yellow jackets that are trying to find a new place to have a new family, new this, new that. I actually am not sure. I'm trying to think if I know this, but I am not positive as to whether or not yellow jackets are, I believe they are hive, but I am not positive as to how many drones they take with them as they travel. That's a really good question though. I'm going to save that and look that up later and confirm that next week. Thank you so much for your question, Tegan. That was a really, really interesting one. I'm seeing also that we have posted our YouTube channel with all of our videos, so please take a look at that after this live feed and let me know what you think. Tegan, love this question. Are they more territorial than drones? Are the queens more territorial than drones? Great question. So when we're talking about bees, the drones exist to protect the queen. So they will be extremely defensive over their queen. If you are to see a bee or a swarm of bees moving in a distance, or I have heard of queens and their bees trying to take up a new residence really close to a house, and that is when they are at their most vulnerable. They're out in public, they've got no hive, they're really scared, they're protecting their queen, who is like their, gateway to all life and safety. They are very territorial and very protective. The queen is, so I would answer that's like, as a unit, they're very territorial. The queen gives off pheromones and chemicals to help keep the drones with her and keep them buzzing and really, really defensive and protective of her. So you could think of them as her army. So yeah, she's eliciting and inciting that kind of defensiveness into them. Yeah, for sure. Great question. Thank you for it. So my next question, and I am looking at comments if you have other questions that you want to go. We have 9 minutes. This is going so fast. That's so awesome. Well, it's not awesome because I could hang out with you all day getting your questions, but it's awesome that it's going so fast and that it's so much fun. So my next question was, what does the Schuylkill Center do for habitat rehabilitation, and how do they take care of their wild lands? Such a great question, actually. So the Schuylkill Center has an entire land and facilities team, which everyone who's watching me right now or who watches this recorded video should know that this team is unparalleled. They do so much good work. They are in charge of our habitat rehabilitation and maintenance, and they do really important work. So I did mention the mowing that goes on in various areas of the Schuylkill Center. So not only do they mow when they mow a field, which might just look like mowing a lawn, they are always keeping track of planting native plants on those lawns. And we have a really big problem with invasive plants at the Schuylkill Center. And the invasive plants we have are not the same ones I was talking about that are good for your garden and pollinators. These are the type that are vicious overpowers of our native plants and animals. Not their fault, of course. They didn't choose to come here, and they're doing what they're doing, trying to survive and thrive in this world. But it does create a lot of problems and damages to some of our native plants. So they are doing a lot of damage control with our invasives, such as our mile-a-minute, our wineberries, our devil's walking stick plants, and they are always promoting and trying Japanese knotweed. Yes, that's another one. They are always trying to promote and facilitate the growth of new native plants. And one of the really cool places actually that they are, or one of the new really cool projects, initiatives that they're doing is they have a whole section that I got to see actually for like the very first time last year, where there are a bunch of trees that were planted that were previously rare finds at the Schuylkill Center for various reasons. They used to be more numerous, and then because of invasives and because of land loss, they were lost from us, a lot of species of these trees. And so they had planted a bunch of them, and they had tagged them actually, so you were able to see the species, and they knew how old they were and how long they had been there. And they were doing these surveys every year on how large they were getting, whether or not there were seedlings, saplings near the original trees planted. So it was a really cool project to be able to see happen. So yeah, that is one of the main things that they're doing. And then they're also helping to make the trails always more accessible for us, and all of the people that come to visit, which is just really, really amazing. They're also we have a problem with erosion around at the Schuylkill Center. And so they're always creating new creative ways for water to get down into, because we have so many hills and valleys, into the valleys and into the streams and creeks safely without eroding our more sensitive territory and our more sensitive hills and wildlife. So that's always really cool to see. They construct these beautiful little pathways that are also really aesthetically pleasing on top of being very useful and helpful. So that is some of the things that we are doing to promote wildlife habitat. It's really great. Frankly, it's great to be a part of it. A little bit about the Schuylkill Center, I'll say really quickly too, is that we are, the Schuylkill Center, the whole property used to be farmland. So because of that, all of it had to be rehabilitated from the ground up. And that is why we have so many problems with invasive species, and why it's interesting when you go there, you might see a forest floor that looks a lot different than perhaps, say, the Wissahickon or something like that, which is old forest, which has been around for and undisturbed, let's say, for a much longer period of time. So it's a really interesting comparison. Any thoughts on the spotted lanternfly nymph control and eradication? Lots of thoughts. It is a constant work in progress. I know that some, I'm at the 5-minute mark too, so I'll keep that in mind. I know that a lot of the process involves taking down the tree of heaven, which, if you don't know, is the egg-laying spot of the spotted lanternfly, and it is also an invasive tree as well. So that's a good thing that we don't have to worry about removing that tree or letting it get sick or anything like that. It's a 2-in-1 process. The spotted lanternfly eradication is a frustrating one. It is a taxing one, both physically, financially, mentally, if you let it get to you. But I would say, for me personally, whenever I see people as citizens helping to eradicate individually the spotted lanternflies, kill them. Yes, kill them. For me, it's important too that we remember and that we teach, when we teach people to kill them and to look out for them and identify them, I would say we should still be reminding ourselves, our friends, our peers, our children, whoever, to be respectful of the fact that they are still living species that, again, like I said before, did not mean to come here and wreak the havoc they are wreaking. They're just trying to live their lives, and it's not their fault they ended up here and that they're doing so well and so successfully here. So yes, kill away, but I always like to promote the idea of remembering why we have to kill them. It's to save other species and other native wildlife, and not just because they're bad and evil, because none of our wild creatures are evil. So I have one more question. Is Dawn dish soap mixed with water spray okay for a natural species? That's a really good question, actually. I personally have not heard of this method, so I do not want to speak on it for sure, but I'll tell you what I'm going to do, because I understand I am able to respond to these comments even after I have gone off air. I'm going to look that up really quickly, and I'm going to want to get back to you because that is a really interesting question, and I would like to know it for myself. I've seen a couple of different ways that people are taking out these spotted lanternflies. A big one too is that in the fall, more so, going to find those trees of heaven and finding the little egg sacs. They sort of look like, they're like charcoal gray, kind of flattened protrusions coming from the tree, and you could just scrape them right off. Every little bit helps. Every egg sac contains a whole lot of eggs, so every little bit definitely helps. So I am at my 1-minute mark here, which is so cool. Please comment below if you have any other questions. If I don't get to them today to respond to you, I will put them to respond to next week. Please keep an eye out for the Google Doc. It will be in this comment section. It will be on our website. It is ongoing. Throw me some good questions, because I will be back here next week at 5 o'clock, ready for you. And please go check out our website, our YouTube, our Facebook, our Instagram, and all the other mediums we have to try and get in touch with you, because we are so excited to be here with you. I'm so excited to be planning all of these things and events and programs, and getting to know people that, like I said before, even if they can't ever make it to the Schuylkill Center, I would love to get to know you from far away. So it's really, really exciting. All right, everybody, have a wonderful, outdoorsy, if possible, day and rest of your night, and I'll see you next week.